person.
Morning.
My internet's been down, just came back on. Let's hope it's, oh gosh, let's hope it stays on.
Yikes.
Yeah. Oh, I hate it when that happens.
Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah. All right. Well, it is 7:31 according to my computer. So I think we should get started because we only have an hour until we move into the annual transform. So welcome everybody. If you haven't already, please put your name in the chat box just so we all know who's on. And then I think, if anything, welcome to this beautiful foggy morning. You know, I am a little thankful that I am meeting in my study this morning and not together, but I do agree with Liz. It is tough not seeing people, especially all the relationships that we've started to create over the past, you know, decades. And so it's tough to not see those people. So I definitely haven't seen people face to face in quite a while, and it is a little sad. So we'll see what happens. But welcome everybody, and let's kick off this meeting. So first up, I have approval of the September 24th NATA minutes. So everybody should have received these minutes in your email along with the agenda. Are there any changes or additions that people have for the minutes? And then you don't have any, that's great. Can I get a motion to approve the September 24th minutes, please?
Motion to approve the minutes, Jessica. Good morning.
Thanks, Jessica. Good morning. And a second?
Second, Elizabeth Law Evans, Broomfield.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All right. Anyone, all in favor of approval of the minutes? Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you guys. We're getting going here. It's early, I know it's tough. All right, so we approved the September 24th minutes. Karen and team, do you want to give us a smart commute update?
Yeah, and it's going to be very brief today. Let's see, we've got the big transform coming up at 8:30. We have about 40 people signed up for that, so that's pretty exciting. The good news is, you know, we got some great speakers who didn't have to actually come in to do the program. The bad news is none of us get to network, and that's something you just talked about, Chair, is how important those relationships are. But we're excited to do that. So, Carson, you have a couple of slides for me if you want to throw that first one up. Okay, here's the leave behind. There it is. So we've completed the leave behind. We are going to send that out to everybody. Next page on that, please. There you go. We have made the primary projects list a lot less wordy. Just really talking about what those improvements are that we're asking for, whether it's safety and operational, those kinds of things. And then down here in the bottom, you can see this QR code and also our website, and it says a complete list and description of NATA priority projects can be found at or hitting this. So in order to make this a readable document, we've changed it a little bit, but the content is about the same. And while I don't expect you to look this over on the screen and make any changes or edits, we'll send it out to everybody probably on Monday. And if you want to use it for your own jurisdictions, you can do that. If you want to make some changes or you want us to make some changes, please let us know. We have had the opportunity for the last 6 months to make changes to this, and early on, it got some changes sent to me, but nothing recently. So we think we're pretty good to go on this. I've updated the dates on some of this stuff. And I want to thank Tammy Harriet for working on this. She's the one who really put her nose to the grindstone and got this done for us. So thanks very much. Next on my report is, I wanted to show you the Flex Ride ridership. We're doing really well. When you think that you can only put 5 people per bus into this Flex Ride, you can see our numbers are pretty good. So if you go back to December of last year, that reflects Christmas and retail activity with more employers and more employees. And then if you go to January and February, you can see downturn in the retail work. And then in April, here you go, essential workers, lockdown in March, essential workers in April, and holding our own pretty well. June, July, I don't know what the jump was for July, pretty significant jump in July. And I think when we see November, December, we'll see those retail workers again. We're holding our own. We're one of the strongest Flex Ride ridership groups out there. And I want to thank Jean Shreve, who runs that program for us and does some one-on-one customer service that really speaks to the success that we've had out there. She does a lot of travel training and works with employers, particularly the Amazon, St. Anthony North area, helping with doing new employer intake, giving them all the information on how to ride RTD products and how to get from where they're coming from to where they need to go for employment. So I'm really pleased to show you these numbers today. Next slide, please. And then finally, CDOT, and I saw Andy is on there. CDOT sent me this timeline of what we can expect on I-25 project 36 to 1/4. And so basically they're developing a list of traffic modeling options that'll come out at the end of this month. And then they're coordinating with that I-270 team. You know, the I-270 is underway. The preliminary engineering is underway for that, and they really need to know how that 270 is going to function with I-25. That starts in November. They have discussions with RTD about what RTD transit needs are, and a review.
This Tim. Hey.
Tim, can you mute your microphone? Review impacts of direct connects interchange. That's where the 270 directly connects to 36, and then develop logistics exhibits and materials for a design charrette that will be coming in early December. And they think they'll have some alternatives, significant alternatives open for us to look at in 2021. That's our report, and we, in the spirit of moving through this agenda fairly rapidly, now turn it over back to you, Chair Mullica. Thank you.
Awesome, great. Are there any quick questions for Karen and her update? I'm not seeing any hands or anything in the chat, but thank you for sharing those numbers around the Flex Ride. Those are phenomenal. That is so great to see. So very exciting. All right, so I do want to give time for our directors to have comments. Let's see, I see Vince is on. I thought I saw Troy earlier. Any updates from our directors?
Vince, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Troy. I'll go ahead. Not a lot going on. I mean, well, not a lot going on. There's a lot always going on at RTD. So, you know, the big things we're talking about now are the service plan change that'll go into effect in January, and how we're shifting resources from lines that are not performing well during the pandemic to areas where we've got a wealth of demand. So we're doing a lot of shifting around on District J. No impacts there. That's my district. So up here, some other districts have some other impacts. We're looking forward to welcoming our new general manager November 9th, and Deborah Johnson will be coming on board. Then last night we had a relatively fun meeting. It was the annual dinner meeting between RTD and CDOT, which we did virtually by Zoom, and our board chair, Angie Rivera Malpietti, and the CDOT Commission Chair, Karen Stewart, were the hosts of that meeting, and it was fairly well attended. Troy, I know you were there, and it was good. It was an interesting and a fun event. So that's all I have, unless you've got some more stuff, Troy.
Not much, just to echo the COVID service plan proposal that we'll finalize next week. We did not see a great deal of change in Vince's district, as he mentioned, and mine. Actually, maybe a teeny bit of enhancement on a couple of routes in Commerce City. So we got through relatively unscathed as far as major changes. And, I think credit Gene and Karen and Carson and the whole gang with our flex ride that's so successful. We kind of put our money where our mouth is, saying we really need this, and we proved it. And it has done well through the pandemic, and that's awesome. A lot of us are spending a great deal of time working through the process of the appointed accountability committee. I know Julie has a report coming up next, and I can't wait to hear her comments. The committee has spawned off 3 subcommittees, and I believe they're meeting twice a month. It seems like every other day. I'm sure Julie would agree with that. And the whole committee is meeting once a month, and she'll probably give some summaries of that. So I don't want to rein in on that. But we have a finance committee, we have a operations committee, and we have a governance committee. And obviously there's a lot of discussion on the governance committee about reformulation of the RTD board. Operations yesterday talked a little bit about mostly our services to people with disabilities and making sure we're meeting the needs and looking at possible optimization, which is a really hard look during COVID, because we're kind of looking ahead to normal times and not what we're dealing with now. So it's difficult for the committee members. Look forward to our CEO coming on. She did join us last night at our joint meeting with CDOT commissioners, and I think we had 10 or 11 of our board members there. So good interaction on a casual basis, which we need to do more of. That's very fruitful. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you for the time.
Madam Chair, just one last thing from me. As you know, the FISA account has been a topic of discussion up here, and I'm pleased to announce that we're not only able to maintain the balance of FISA, but in the 2021 budget, there's a proposal to add just over $17 million to the FISA. So Director Whitmore, Lubau, Geisinger, all of us up north, and all of you, with all of your help, pushed really hard to make that happen. And it looks like we're going to continue to put some money in there, at least for next year. Thanks.
And I appreciate you bringing that up. That is so important. And we have, the onslaught of tapping that is not over, but we're over the biggest hurdle, I think, as Vince mentioned. And I appreciate the backstop from this group. It's vitally important. Thank you all.
Yes, that is very exciting news. Thank you for sharing that with this group. I really appreciate it. So I do have a question from Jessica Sangren.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Troy and Vince, for the updates, especially on the FISA. That's great news. I do have a couple questions, really just a quick question, and maybe you can just send it to me in the chat. There's a lot of confusion, I think, on the when the lines got changed, or when the end line came up, some of the lines went away or got renamed, and some of the people are having a hard time figuring out how to get to their doctor's office from I guess they used to ride the 88. And so I don't know where to look. I can't figure out on the new schedule what was the old schedule numbers to help them. And so I don't know if you can just send it to me in a link, or tell me, or send me an email, but I can't get through to anyone to find out either.
Yeah, we can do that. I see we've got several staff members, so we'll follow up on that to see if we can get a kind of a conversion table from old to new. That is a little bit of a challenge.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments for our RTD directors? Are there any other directors that I missed? I didn't see any others. Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here, and thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. And that great news with FISA. Fantastic. So it's good to hear that. All right. So next, we're going to be doing an update report on the RTD Accountability Committee. And so I wanted to just go over with you guys kind of what's been going on, and then the direction that the Accountability Committee is now going to move forward. So Carson, can you pull up that document I sent you? That would be fantastic.
Of course, just one sec.
Yeah, okay, no worries. So one of the things that I wanted to just share with you guys is we've been meeting since August-ish, I think. And so it's been an interesting process so far. And I think one of the biggest hurdles is the charge for this group could be very broad, actually. And so I felt like we struggled to really kind of hone down and focus on what are some things that we are really trying to accomplish. And so I did recommend a couple weeks ago that, you know, we really should utilize the subcommittees a little bit more and actually help them or encourage them to have a little bit more focus. And one of the reasons that we could do that is by having a chair for each subcommittee and then really just kind of hammering out objectives to look forward to. And so this past Monday, we did have chairs assigned to each committee, and then I am chairing the governance subcommittee. And we have Rutt Bridges chairing the finance committee, and Dea, I forgot her last name, is chairing the operations committee. And so what I wanted to share with you guys was this document here, which is showing just kind of the focus areas and really just us trying to, you know, get our hands around the duties and tasks of these subcommittees. So as Troy said, the subcommittees are meeting twice a month, and then we're reporting up into the whole committee meeting, which is occurring on a monthly basis. So, and then what I really wanted to just try and, my point of this conversation is not only just to give you an update, but also just kind of get your feedback on where you think we might be missing things, or where are some things that you think that we need to highlight a little bit more, and just get your general feedback. So I really like this core problems that RTD, the committee needs to address, because again, I felt like we just needed to be really a lot more direct about what we were focusing on. So financial stability is number one, which is super important because it really is the foundation for everything that RTD is able to do. We have rebuilding trust and transparency with constituents. And so a lot of this is, you know, coming from feedback that we hear not only from our residents, but also from other elected officials and things that we've said here in NATA, where we need to rebuild the trust and be able to work better with RTD. And so I think that the end line was definitely a point of contention, but then also we still have to complete the end line, right? And then we also have the northwest line as well that that needs to can still be built out. So, you know, how do we rebuild that trust? Increasing ridership is obviously something that needs to be addressed. It's tough in the time of COVID because I don't know about you guys, but a lot of offices haven't really gone back to work. My office is actually suspended until January. So a lot of people are still working remotely. I actually drove past the 84th and I-25 park and ride, and I did it yesterday morning, and I was just in awe of how empty it was, because there used to always be massive lines at that park and ride, and now there was just a handful of cars. So it really just speaks to the time what we're in right now. And then, you know, but after COVID, how can we increase ridership? So I think those are conversations that are happening. Ensuring appropriate levels of service, I think is really important for especially transit reliant and vulnerable populations, strengthening partnerships, addressing unfinished fast track corridors, which is obviously something we're very encouraged to see. Encouraging RTD to innovate and participate in new dynamics and trends, refocusing RTD on serving core missions, serving transit markets well, and then addressing workforce challenges. So, I mean, there's a lot in there. And so, as you can imagine, if you start thinking through this process, there is just so much information or so many kind of rabbit holes that you could go down when it comes to ideas and things that people have brought up that RTD can focus on. So I wanted to just also go over the governance subcommittee, and then as well, we'll talk about each one independently, but I think that this is supposed to give us a little bit more of an idea of what each subcommittee is going to be focusing on. What is it that we're actually trying to accomplish? And so we did have a governance subcommittee on Monday. And so we went through this list, we talked about it a little bit more, and we really agreed that 1 and 2 are huge priorities for this governance subcommittee, and really just educating the committee on different transit models that could help us meet the needs that we're hearing from, again, residents and local officials. So one of the biggest ones is a lot of people are talking about community-based transit planning. We're talking about how do we make sure that local governments have a voice in RTD, in the operations of RTD, and some people are even talking about funding changes. Can we use the DRCOG kind of sub-regional tip form process that we went through a couple of years ago to help really identify kind of like these office call. Yeah. Oh, does someone have a question? Okay, maybe someone was just unmuted. Okay, so going through the DRCOG sub-regional tip form type processes to create smaller local groups to have these discussions. And then the biggest one that I've heard from, especially people up north, well, Elise Jones mostly, is exploring how to enable partnerships with other transit agencies. As people from outside of our district want to connect to the district, how are we working with them to kind of partner and move forward with that? So those are some of the ideas. I know we do have a presentation from LA Metro on our next subcommittee meeting, and we're going to continue to kind of just evaluate different models that can help us meet our goals, which are increasing, I guess, local input and addressing, you know, some of those concerns that we've been talking about here at NATA for quite a while. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts just on this portion of the subcommittee, and then we'll move on to some of the other ones. How are you guys feeling like this is how do you, I'm sorry, I'm reading the chat at the same time. How do you guys feel like this is going? All right, so we have a couple comments. It looks here. Joan, do you want to kick us off? I see that you put one in the chat.
Sure, thank you, Jessica. I do like the idea of the tip forum process for local governments. We don't really hear from local governments in our area as much as I think we should. And I'm talking about the elected officials. We always hear from the county, which is great. We get good information, but I would like to hear what the local elected officials on the different municipalities in our district here, because they really are the boots on the ground for their constituents. And sometimes we only hear about the ideas that the county transportations are doing about the commissioners, what they are working on in a large capacity. But it really is the voices of the people if we can get together at least once to hear what the other cities are experiencing through their local leaders, I think that would be very, very important and helpful.
Great, thank you. Malcolm, I see you put a comment in. Do you want to speak to your comment?
Sure, I'll just elaborate a little bit. I think the first bullet on your core issues is really the most important one. Without adequate funding, the rest of the things are, as I said, unrealistic aspiration. I'd like to see a comparison of how RTD's revenue sources compare with other comparable transit agencies. And I mean, the Northwest Rail is just a great example. We're talking about building something in 30 years from now because we don't have enough money, and it was supposed to be built 10 years ago. That's primarily a money issue. And I think that pervades all of the other issues. If you don't have enough resources, it's hard to deliver on any of those other bullets. So that's a key one for me. And obviously, we always need to be looking at cost efficiencies and making sure we're doing things effectively. But we need to get real on how much money it takes to do these things.
Agreed. Yeah, it's such of a core issue to everything that we're trying to do. Jessica Stankard?
Thank you. Julie, I'm really glad that you're on this committee and that you're chairing the governance subcommittee on top of that. So I really like this idea of community-based transit planning. I think that is going to be very much what we have to look forward to, trying to solve our own issues. But is this document available somewhere, or is it public out there, I guess?
It is, yeah, and we could send it to you. It's actually, you can find it on the DRCOG website for Monday's meeting. It's just our agenda. It's just in order.
Okay.
So yeah, we could send that out to you guys.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for the work on this.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the group?
I just want to say I'm so glad that you're there, Julie. This is Steve Odoricio. And we know that you're going to be watching out for equity issues, both equity as far as who people are, but also where people are. And I think that's important. And I'm just so glad that you're there. So thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, I saw that Lisa Trujillo put in a couple links into the chat. Let's see, service changes and line frequency and service plans. So make sure to check those out. So Carson, can you scroll down a little bit? I want to just highlight some of the other subcommittees as well. So I'm not as familiar with the Operations and Finance Subcommittee, but I wanted to share this with you guys just so you could overview as well, because you know, I call in when I can, but it's a lot of meetings. And so I definitely appreciate our RTD directors who are trying to tackle these numerous meetings, because it's a little overwhelming at times. So thank you guys for hanging in there with us and you know, giving us your input and answering questions. So this is the Operations Subcommittee and some of the work that they're trying to do. So assess and make recommendations on how RTD fares and pass programs could be improved to increase equity, ridership, affordability, and ease of access. So I know that there's lots of conversations and opinions about how you know, some of these fares and pass programs work, if they're effective, if they're not effective, and then including you know, the eco passes. So I really appreciate that this is going to be a priority for them. Number two, making recommendations on how RTD can enhance service delivery to transit-reliant, vulnerable populations. So as we heard Troy say, this was a huge part of their conversation this past, which was yesterday, yeah. Number three, focus on proactive community-based transit service planning and operations. So I think that this is a great way to, you know, really focus on the needs, the local needs that we have, and then strengthen and formalize the coordination between RTD and cities and counties. So to develop and review and approve these projects. So it kind of feeds into what we were talking a little bit earlier. Number four, undertake an overall organizational assessment. And that's where they're really looking at work culture. We figured that would work better under the operations subcommittee than any other subcommittees. Work culture and just kind of the culture of RTD is something that's come up previously here at NATA. So I appreciate that they're taking that on, and then emphasize social and environmental justice. So again, very excited about their list. Do we have any questions regarding operations subcommittee? Again, I'm less familiar with it, but I will try and answer a question if there is anybody.
Julie, I just wanted to let the group know that I am doing my best to attend all of those meetings. Lynn Geisinger's attending the other two subcommittees. From time to time, I'm able to jump on the governance committee, but I missed the last one just due to my regular job. But I would say that with the unveiling of this document, Madam Chair and others, I'll be careful, but I think we finally found some focus. It was such a broad-based, wide open type of structure to begin. It was a little difficult. So, and I know the staff at RTD is doing everything they can to get information to Dr. Cog for that group as soon as possible, because oftentimes we have it, and we just need to get the flow worked out. I think we've turned a corner on that, and then on the focus. So, but yeah, on the ops side, you know, any ideas that you have, please get to me and or other members of the ops committee. Thanks.
And Troy, thank you for saying that, because it was like the Wild West before this document came out on Monday. And so this has really helped, I think, everybody just get a better sense of where this accountability committee is trying to go. Jessica, I see that you have a comment about local fair versus regional fair. If you have input and would like to have a conversation about that, please throw that out there.
I think I was just wondering, you know, we still get a lot of questions about that. The people who are writing the N-line are worried. Is this going to end soon? How is this going to work? When are we going to start paying the regional? So I'm just wondering if this operations subcommittee is where that conversation is going to take place.
So to be honest, Jessica, I don't know if they're specifically looking at our situation up here on the N-line. I think they're probably looking at broader questions. And so I definitely could send it over to them, but according to our current process, and I think maybe we might need to get Vince or Troy to talk about this, but after our pilot program, I think they were going to look at ridership, right, Vince, to see if we're going to continue this. And I think that's probably still up for discussion.
I didn't explain that very well. Sorry. I know that when we first got this local fair, that there was some conversation around making a local fair the only fair price, or making there be one price instead of these other local and regional. So not just for N-line.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay. Thank you, Jessica. That helps.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Well, the RTD board and staff, Jessica, will be monitoring what that looks like with the 6-month trial. The issue we have is how good of a trial is it with COVID? We know the numbers are not going to be what we had hoped, but there is a lot of other interest in seeing if we can do that throughout the district. This was really more of a brainchild event, so I'll let him speak to that as well.
Thanks, Troy. Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. Yeah, the promotional fair pilot program on the N-line sparked more discussion at RTD with regard to eliminating fair zones, exploring all kinds of options that would reduce fares and create one fair zone. The concept being that the easier you make travel on transit, the more people are inclined to use it. Unfortunately, the pandemic kind of put all that discussion on hold, which is really unfortunate, because I believe that, you know, staff was on board and finally seeing that we need to rethink the concept of all these different fare zones and so forth. So we were moving that forward, but you know, that's taking a back burner now. Hopefully we can get back to that discussion, because I think it's an important one.
Julie, I think a conceptual discussion of this under the ops committee would be appropriate, because that's something we were looking at. So, but that is not for me to suggest. We're very much ex officio and don't participate in a big way unless we're asked, because we don't want to cloud the decision making. So, but it seems to be appropriate at both places, especially at the RTD board, but even back to accountability, because it's a good concept that drives the price of fares down and hopefully makes it easier, as my esteemed colleague just said, to utilize our services. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, Jessica, I will take that to Dea, who's chairing the operations subcommittee, and I will have a conversation with her about that to include.
Thanks, Julie.
That conversation. Sounds great. Any other questions in this operations subcommittee section? Oh, Steve, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only thing is just let's stay aware of the differences of geography. And I know that this group, we have an amazing group of folks that are participating. I've been more optimistic about our RTD leadership than I have been in decades. So you guys are great. The only thing when it comes to operations is this happens a lot to us up north. As soon as we get to the front of the line on getting some of our services and getting things to reach us, then people start worrying about other factors, you know, and that's what I don't want to have happen is like we're finally getting to the front of the line to get some of our stuff done. And then people are like in the other areas after they've gotten their services built out or reached them, they're like, okay, now we got, what's next? And it's like, wait, you got to finish, you know, expanding service and making sure we reach the folks up north. And like, oh, no, we're going to start working on these other issues. And so I think all these issues are valid and 100% important for us to be watching. But what's also important is to make sure that people, you know, we're not changing the rules again because just because they're finished with getting their service to them. I want to make sure that we are pushing continuously to make sure we get them to finish out and reach all the folks in our community before we start allowing. These are good distractions, don't get me wrong, right? I mean, these are good things for everyone to focus on, but this happens to us on a lot of things, whether it's, you know, a lot of transportation things. So that's all I think you guys know what I'm getting at, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I give it to I gotcha. Awesome. Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that comment. That's helpful. Okay. Do we have any other questions or comments from this group? I'm not seeing any others. Okay. So let's move on to the finance subcommittee, which Malcolm was talking about is probably the most important subcommittee that we have, because it is looking at kind of like that financial model and really kind of reviewing the investment policies, looking at debt, regional, sub-regional funding allocations, statutes that limit opportunities for revenue generation. So that's actually been a huge conversation, I think, in probably all three subcommittees is, you know, what are ways that those statutes are actually limiting RTD, and how do we, you know, get a handle on that and take advantage of this next legislative session if needed. So I think that has been a great conversation. I love bullet number 2, review fast track spending and make recommendations on how to achieve an equitable resolution for the unfinished fast tracks corridor. So fast tracks is not going away. It's still a conversation that's going to be a priority. And so I think it's really important to really talk about what is that process for funding and finishing those corridors. And number 3 is making recommendations on how to improve financial transparency to build back public trust. I think that that's really important. One of the things that I hear from, you know, my constituents and other local electeds is, you know, that trust factor, and it kind of feeds in. I feel like this is kind of like a really, I don't know, it's just like a vicious cycle, if you will, because the trust factor, I think, limits our ability to raise more funds, because, you know, if I'm going to go and ask for my neighbors to do, you know, a tax increase for transit, you know, I'm not really sure. I don't know if my community would go for it right now. We just got the end line. It took us how many years to get there? And so I think it varies across the metro area, but, you know, how can we, you know, build back that trust and really, and really get to the point to where we could help move perhaps a ballot initiative that could get us more funding. So it's a really vicious cycle that, to be honest, I don't know if anyone has a really good answer for or a solution, but I'm glad at least this is part of the conversation, and we're going to continue to, you know, focus on that as a priority. And number 4 is examine partnership opportunities, again, with CDOT, local governments, to enhance mobility services, allow RTD to focus on delivering the types of services that they could do most effectively. So that is the Finance Subcommittee. I see that I do have a comment from Joan. Feel free to jump in, Joan.
Thank you, Julie. Once again, my initial comment about the TIP forum format with local governments is that I think that the relationship that can be built by local communities stepping in to help RTD. For example, when we talk about the fair, et cetera, if the local communities that have a little more money in their budgets could pick up some of that funding for their local communities so that RTD could perhaps have one fair and concentrate on the regional, then we could build trust, hopefully, between RTD and the local communities. And I've always found that when you have a buy-in to a huge project like this, in times of stress, like COVID is giving all of us, then I think that we build a stronger relationship. And that lets our communities know what a struggle it is for both of us, and that we support RTD. And it's also a way to thank RTD, from my perspective, for hanging on to the fiscal account and even boosting it a little more. Moving forward, then I think that relationship would have been built, and we could maybe come up with a better plan. That is just the way I think, that we all have to help. And if we, again, in a local TIP forum, could build some consensus around how does everybody help this project. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Joan. Those are great comments. Vince, I see you have your hand up.
Thanks, Madam Chair. This is an important one, I think, and I'm really thrilled to see paragraph number 1, those bullet points in there with regard to changing the statutory makeup that controls RTD and actually ties our hands from making money. You know, this, I can't tell you how good it is to see the Accountability Committee discussing this, because last year, 2019, we had a dinner that some state representatives were at, and we brought these things up to them at the time, and the you know, the relationship was so bad at that point in time. The response we got was, why should we help you with anything? So anyway, that's changing now, and that's so good to see. And as far as financial transparency, yeah, that needs to change. You know, our budget, that's where everything is, right? With any organization, the money in and money out, that's where all the decisions get made. It's the hardest thing to find on our website, and the hardest thing to understand once you find it. So yeah, we really need to clean that up. Thanks for those for the comments here on this subcommittee.
Great, thank you, Vince. No, I feel like that's a good. The financial transparency is so important, and it is so hard to find things on the RTD website. So I appreciate your comment on that. And then, yeah, I feel like if anything, you know, kind of going back to Joan's point as well, you know, how can we partner and also contribute to this process? I'm sorry to hear about how, you know, your recommendations for legislation last session didn't work out. And so we're hoping that, you know, especially with the Accountability Committee, I'm hoping that we could really just shine light on those important changes that need to be made. So do we have any questions, any other questions from the group, either about just the Finance Subcommittee or anything else about the RTD Accountability Committee that the group has? All right. So I'm not seeing anybody else, but thank you guys so much for kind of walking through this with me. I really wanted to just make sure I got some of your feedback. If you do have anything else or any other questions or comments that come up later, feel free to reach out to me. And, you know, I'm more than willing to highlight your issues, especially in some of the other subcommittees if needed, or just, you know, make sure that your concerns are being addressed. So let's see here. And I think that kind of wraps up my discussion about the RTD Accountability Committee. So I think actually that's the end of our agenda for today. Do we have any final comments from anybody else regarding today's NATA meeting? We are going to shuffle here in just a second to our 8th annual Transform.
Thanks. Just wanted to remind everyone there's no NATA meeting in November. We're going to let you have Thanksgiving without having to have a meeting with us. And then the meeting in December is earlier than usual. So we want to tell you about that. And then in December, we're hoping to have the new RTD General Manager, Deborah Johnson, join us. So wanted to give you all that information. You will have to leave this meeting and log into another Zoom link in order to do Transform. We're pretty excited. It'll start at 8:30. We have some wonderful content, particularly of interest to NATA, I think. The construction videos, the stills of the groundbreaking and the station area ribbon cuttings, and the interviews with the artists at every one of the stations is really a highlight of the part that we've all played. And then some really great speakers, Ray Lang from Amtrak talking about Amtrak's future expansion, and Karen Headland talking about how the feds are interacting with rail funding. So I hope all of you can join us. If you haven't pre-registered, it's okay. You can still use the link and get in. And then we have a great piece of swag to talk about at the end of the program. So thanks for keeping the NATA meeting short today so that we could move out of this one and into the other. I want to say Carson, Tammy, and Catherine on our staff have done a really incredible job stitching all this stuff together while still doing NATA and smart commutes. So kudos to them.
All right, thank you everybody, and looking forward to Transform. So take a quick break, get that extra cup of coffee, and then we will see you guys here in about 10 minutes. So thank you all, and see you soon.